Ambawastage, Ishnish Ade, Waka Ade. Good day. Thank you to the elder who had the prayer. Recognize that I'm on traditional territory of the Lummi people, and recognize that I'm bringing greetings on behalf of my people, the Iahe Nakota Sioux. We are the Rocky Mountain Sioux that are located west of what is called Calgary, Alberta. We call our land or our area Minithni, which means cold water. If you think about it from our roots in the Sioux language, we have places like Minneapolis, which is essentially mini water, polis, Greek, I guess, for city. I am a law graduate, a graduate from a Canadian law school. I do have my JD, but I am a practicing Indigenous legal scholar. That means I believe in the Indigenous laws of our people. I don't place mainstream laws above what we have been given by the Creator. Our laws are Creator's laws. They are the laws of creation. They are the immutable laws. So the man-made laws of mainstream are not what I consider to be practical laws. When I started law school, and this is what I had wrote about, when I started law school, I thought that I was pursuing a dream that I wanted to do when I was younger. I was going in 1989 to a pre-law program, but I found out I was pregnant, so I stopped. And I went home and I finished raising my kids, and I went back to law school when I was 46. And I convocated in 2013. But it was really the Creator's plan that I do it this way. Because I think if I went when I was 27, that I would have been brainwashed like many of our Indigenous lawyers are. And I say that with a lot of love to our Indigenous lawyers, because a lot of them help me with my GoFundMe. So I have to acknowledge that. But at the same time, I also believe that going back to my community, raising my children with my late father, with our ceremonies, language, customs, and tradition, I believe that that was the plan for me, so that I could come into this place and into this time with the knowledge that I now have. Because when I came into the law school, I wasn't an impressionable young student trying to make my name. If the professors told me this is how it is, I'd say, no, I'm from my reserve, this is how it really is. If you have a piece of legislation or you have something very beautiful in theory, I'm sure it took you a long time to write that here in your university office, but let's go apply that, because it's not going to work. I also started studying a lot of Aboriginal law, because I thought, well, Aboriginal law is Indigenous law. Aboriginal law, much like I think American Indian law, is mainstream law, with Aboriginal, Native Americans, Indigenous people were the accused, were the plaintiffs, but that's not our law. That is not the way that we are to be going forward in our lives, with the memories, the sacrifices, everything our ancestors have done. So we have to be mindful of that as Indigenous people, because the things that we bring and the things that we've been taught are the things that are going to keep the global society alive. So it's time to start putting our laws and putting our Indigenous legal traditions at the forefront. I studied a lot of Aboriginal law because I realized that I wanted to understand how mainstream law was looking at our people. And they have things like site-specific rules for where we have territory. So what we understand in our way as sustaining or stewarding a piece of land and not taking, as Ms. Montgomery mentioned, not taking everything and not exploiting a resource, because other people will travel to this site, or our future generations will come back to this place. So we respect that and we sustain that area. But the way the law looks at it is, this is mainstream law, looks at it as though we were just in that one site, so our site specific to that because we were sort of nomadic and wandering around lost or whatever we were doing. But actually what we were doing was moving so that we did not exploit the resource in one area. So there's, as I came in with my Indigenous legal understanding and teachings and Indigenous knowledge, when I came into law school, I really questioned, and I wasn't very popular in law school with our professors. They seemed to really resent the fact that I had an idea about who our people were. I had an idea what our solutions would look like, and that didn't fit into their theories, and that didn't fit into their where our position is, I guess, in when they allow us to become, and I say that when they allow us to become lawyers. One of the things I learned was that within my first few days there was we were given an incident, who would we sue, how would this go be about, and then sort of the question at the end, or the analysis at the end was that, well, it doesn't matter because we're the lawyers, so it doesn't matter if we win or lose because we still get paid. And I thought, well, that can't happen with me because when we lose, our tribe loses, our people lose, the planets lose, the future generations lose. So it's not just a matter of money, prestige, or making a name. It's a matter of survival. So that doesn't sound good to me. I don't like how that sounds. I don't feel comfortable with that. So I struggled quite a bit. I struggled quite a bit in law school. I didn't like the idea of consultation, that was, in my understanding, and in the treaties that we signed, is that we would always have a relationship with the settlers. That relationship with the settlers is ongoing. That's consultation. It's ongoing. We don't need a case or a trio of cases to tell us that we're to have a relationship. We are to have a relationship, that's just the way it is. So let's both come to the table and talk about how we respect or how we are going to work on that relationship. I studied, when we begin, we start with a royal proclamation that the Queen has underlying title to all the reserve. That's news to us and the plants and the animals and the many relations that we have. Even in my introduction, what I'm saying is all my relations. That's our understanding of this world. That's our understanding of the cosmos that we live in. But that's very difficult to bring into an individualistic society. One of my professors, I'm picking on just one professor, said also that he found it odd that when we go to the court, an individual, one person will argue like a fishing case or a hunting case for really what is a collective right. And I thought, but you have collective things in the Constitution to protect what is in fact an individual right. So I guess the reconciliation or the worldviews that we have are directly colliding. The things I had to learn, competition, heartlessness as a lawyer, I could handle that though, ask my ex-husband. Heartlessness, the things I had to handle in my capacity in order to analyze they go directly against what we believe as Indigenous people. They go directly against what we are taught, the kindness, the sharing, the respect, the politeness that was mentioned to start off this session. Those things, the humility, everything that we are taught, you have to put those aside when you go into law school, and you have to sort of take on this persona that you're somebody else or you're thinking of somebody else. And when you succeed, it's an awful feeling. When you succeed and do well, when I've analyzed something very well, I feel bad because that means I was petty enough to pick up on all the small small little things that shouldn't bother me. I mean, when somebody falls by your house on the reserve, everybody laughs and, takes pictures. No, that is a big crime. That's a liability issue. That's somebody's to blame. There's due diligence involved. I think that idea that the common laws, where they come from, and I'm lucky that I'm glad Rita mentioned my brother Bill and my brother Tony. We grew up and we've discussed so many of these ideas and so many of these philosophies in our household, and we were very lucky to think about how things have come to be the way they are. And my brother Tony mentioned, he said, well, you think about it, the Europeans were leaving where there was hierarchy, where there was land tenure, where they didn't really have a say, and they come here and they talk about freedom, and they come here and they talk about democracy, but they've essentially set up, basically the same system, but just different people. So they're just spinning their wheels, thinking that this is what's effective, or that it's progress. When in fact, he said, all they've done is repeat, but change sort of the landowners or the feudal system. So when he told me that, I thought, well, that's true, because a lot of the law comes from the land, and that non-relationship to the land, because people move from property to property, they sell their property. There's value in property. We see that value too, but it's not a monetary number. It's not something that can be ever given up. I heard earlier about the Culver case in Cherry Point, so I quickly Googled it, because I'm always interested in other legal cases. But I had mentioned, because I saw Mr. Wildcat this morning, and I went over to him and I said, are you so-and-so? And then I just started spewing what I spew, and started telling him, even going into another court is not expressing our sovereignty. Having the Canadian court system, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's a state court, provincial court, whether it's at the highest level here in the United States, it's still the oppressor's court. It's still not our court system. Another thing I did in my third year of law school is that I started to take mediation, negotiation, because I thought, I heard a lawyer come there and say, oh, this is so new, this is something we've never thought of. Because the court system inherently is adversarial. There's a winner and a loser. This worked very well, looking at the common law tradition that came from England, or the European idea of court. It worked well because you had a winner and a loser, and these people never saw each other again, probably. They probably, maybe lived in London or where have you, and fought, but never had a relationship. For us, we had consensus in our communities for a reason, because we still lived in our tribal villages. We still had to get along with each other. So we had to work through to a solution. So now, the adversarial, or that model of winner-loser is not working for the non-First Nation community. Now they're starting to look at consensus, negotiation, mediation. Well, they call it negotiation and mediation for lawyers, because the lawyers can't stand the idea that things can be negotiated without them, so they're also starting to teach this now in law schools. But I mentioned to the professor who was teaching it, I said, what you're really talking about is consensus, I said. And what you're really talking about is the Indigenous law that was always in this land. That's what you're talking about. And he kind of thought for a second, and he thought, well, yeah, I didn't think about that. And I thought, well, because we're Indigenous, and because we're practicing these things, and we see the bigger picture, we think about these things, but we have to talk about them. We have to take ownership of them. We have to have pride in those things that belong to us, or that our people have always had, that we've always carried through. My dad used to tell me a story when I was 3, I guess. I was playing cowboys and Indians with some kids, all non-native kids, because my dad was a minister in northern Alberta, and none of them wanted to be Indians. And I went around smacking them and, I don't know, doing what I do. But I guess, but my dad, even though he was scolding me, he was smiling because he knew, even though I was just a little kid, that I was really proud, that I knew I was an Indian. I knew that I was one of these gifted people, one of these people that the Creator had blessed to be on this island for a specific reason. And I really tried to give that background or that grounding, what you said, to other Indigenous people. I had mentioned to Mr. Wildcat, I recently was hosting a sort of a Twitter feed, and I said it was very difficult because I had two audiences that I could distinguish. The non-native audience that I'm trying to explain or that I'm trying to educate, and then our Indigenous audience who are colonized and who don't understand. And then I said, but I forgot, you know, I also have the audience of our people who are standing with me. You mentioned Idle No More, one of the last speakers. I was in Saskatoon when this came out in 2012. I was in law school in Saskatoon, and the four women, we were invited to the meeting to go with the four women, but we went to something else. But when that started, that movement started, it was a consciousness, it was a reawakening, it was the Indigenous people of Turtle Island standing up and saying, we're not going to take this anymore. We're not going to stand by while our landscapes, our rivers, our brothers and sisters who form relations are being overtaken. And it is, it's not so much, I guess it seems to mainstream, or the portrayal is that it's activism, but actually what it is stewardship and standing up to what our ancestral obligations have always been, what our responsibilities are. So in closing, I'll just tell you a little bit about my dad coming down here to see Vine Deloria. My dad was a longtime admirer of Vine Deloria's works, and he always encouraged us to read Vine Deloria and to try and use his work in any education path we were pursuing. My older brother has a degree from Arizona State University. My late mother was Quechan from Yuma, Arizona, full-blooded Quechan from Yuma, Arizona. And my brother is born in Phoenix, John Jr., then me. Then my brother Peter in environmental science, Tony in English, Billy in business, Teresa with a background in law enforcement, and my sister Gloria, who was former Miss Indian World. I have to make sure I include all the family, because somebody's going to yell at me after this and say, you didn't do this. But my dad really strived, he really believed in education, that we have to go get the mainstream education, bring it back to our people, and make it work for the community. Not go out, get the mainstream education, learn all the improper concepts, and come back and misapply them to our communities. That we'd have to go out and we'd have to understand what the Wasiji was thinking and come back and teach our people or arm our people how to fight that. So when he came down here, he and Vine Deloria were, I think there was some synchronicity there when they met. And my dad was writing a foreword to his book, These Mountains Are Sacred Places, which again goes to the topic of place. The places that we call our sacred places, the places that we have where our knowledge systems, the places that we have our names, like I said, Minneapolis. In Banff, we have Minnewanka. Minnehipa is Banff, where the water cascades or tumbles. Minnewanka is God's water or sacred water. So we've named, and some of my brothers have worked in GPSing and putting this information into databases. so that they have the information. They don't necessarily share the information, but we have the information. Because it's important to have that understanding and the lines and all the information that we've always had from time immemorial continue, but we can also kind of, instead of fitting our Indigenous thinking into a mainstream frame, we can kind of take what mainstream is and fit it into our frame. And that's the paradigm shift. Instead of thinking like coming here today and producing a paper for academic standing, our oral tradition, our storytelling, our way of doing things should be the way that we establish, it should be the way that we look at success, or look at Indigenous teaching success or Indigenous knowledge success, and it should be in the language. So my dad came down here. He spent some time with Vine Deloria. That November, Vine Deloria passed away. The following June, my dad passed away. And another one of the reasons I went to law school is because my dad was a traditional person, and he was having difficulty with a mainstream judge, and so the man-made laws of non-First Nation society were kind of judging my dad. But when my dad passed away, he had done many things. He had started the Indian Ecumenical Conference, which was a call for all First Nations to renew their spirituality. He had stood up in 1969 and read the red paper, the response to the 1969 white paper, which was an assimilationist policy of then Pierre Elliott Trudeau, whose son is now the Prime Minister of Canada. And he had gone, in 1976, he went and he lobbied the Queen to include Section 35 into the Canadian Constitution, where a number of our source of Indigenous treaty or legal rights come from today. So with that background and understanding who my dad was, and that he never flinched from the system, he stood outside that system and persevered until the end. And in the end, when he passed away, 8 buffalo came to the house. There were eagles flying around the house. 8 buffalo came to his wake. And so in that way, we believe that creation honored my dad's passing. We believe that Creator's laws were the laws that were in application. And that's where I get my understanding. As Rita mentioned, I was a little bit worried coming. I started a GoFundMe, and I didn't have a lot of backers, and the lawyers weren't coughing it up. But I just said, I'm going on faith. I'm going on faith that it's for me to go, and that I have something important to say, and then I will make it down there, and then I will make it home. And I'm here. So I think that what we talk about, the metaphysics or the faith or the spirituality of our ancestors, we can't make that into something that is just that is compartmentalized or that is taught in some kind of a vacuum. It's everywhere. It's the interrelatedness that we have with each other, with the land around us. And that's what I hope to be able to work and do, because I think our Indigenous legal traditions have to take their rightful place, and that's not just for our survival, but it's for every person's survival. And I hear that echoed here today. I'm very grateful to the Vine Deloria Committee for giving me the opportunity to speak and for inviting me down here. I'm very thankful that I've been able to already speak to some of the Native American Indigenous people who are here, and to learn and hear that the work is going on elsewhere. And I'm heartened by that. I feel good that in the next generations, with my granddaughters, my grandsons, that they'll pick up and keep our legacy going of who we are as a people and what we can contribute to global village, the global teepee village we all now live in. Thank you. Ishnish.
Thank you, Rachel and John, very much. What a wonderful way to close the morning session. Both very heartfelt spoken words, wonderful stories, wonderful guidance. We very much appreciate your taking the time to come here, traveling a long distance through academia and a long distance in mileage. And we would like to gift you each with a print by Kana.